Classification of cost by nature of elements. Classification of cost by nature of elements can be divided into three main categories: material, labor, and other expenses. And each of these three categories can be further divided into two sections, which is direct and indirect. Let's look into these three categories in detail. Number one, material. The substance from which the product is made is known as material. Material can be divided into two, direct and indirect. Direct materials, this refers to those materials which become a major part of the finished product and can be easily traceable to the units. Indirect materials. Now, these are the materials that are used for production related activities that are not easily traceable to specific physical units. Number two, labor. All expenses made by an employer as a result of hiring labor are referred to as labor costs. This can be categorized into direct and indirect labor. Direct labor. This can be defined as the pay given to employees who are involved in the manufacturing process and whose labor can be reasonably and easily linked to production units. Indirect labor. Indirect labor is labor that is used to complete tasks related to the provision of products or service. It is extremely difficult to associate it with specific output units. For an example, store managers, foremen, timekeepers, supervisors, inspectors are a few examples of indirect labor as they're not directly involved in the manufacturing process of the product. Number three, other expenses. Other expenses include those which are incurred for the company's secondary businesses but do not directly relate to the company's primary business functions. They are costs that the organization doesn't have to incur in order to conduct its daily operations. Other expenses are further divided into two categories: direct expenses and indirect expenses. Direct expenses. These are the costs that are associated with and incurred on a particular cost unit. Examples include the price of a unique layout, design, or set of drawings, the cost of renting specific tools or equipments for a project, or the fees paid to consultants in relation to the project. Indirect expenses. Indirect expenses are the costs that are not conveniently or immediately attributable to a cost center or cost units. For an example, rent, rates and taxes, insurance, electricity, heating and lighting are a few examples for indirect expenses.